Hello everybody, it's Silver. This is Genome Guardian. So this is a turret defense game, and if you don't know what one of those is, it's actually a really simple concept. You have a turret in the middle of the screen, and enemies will spawn from the edges of the screen and move inward. Stop them from getting to you. That's basically it. It's where all the mechanics intersect and stuff, where it all gets really interesting. So first off, how the game looks. It looks really good, in my opinion, because it uses color in a really smart way. Basically, this game is based entirely around the use of the 4 DNA letters A, G, T, C, and each one has a color, and thus anything involving those letters also uses that same color. Or indeed a combination of colors, depending on what letters it has. And this works for both your weaponry and for the enemy types and everything, so everything uses this really recognizable color scheme that goes throughout the whole game. So the game's visual style is really nice because it's super vibrant but also very readable, which is important because in the later stages of the game things get very fast and frantic, and there's a real worry that things could get hard to read if you're not careful. So the fact that everything remains so bright and colorful but also readable is pretty impressive. But I think the real star here was actually the soundtrack for the game. Unfortunately, I can't really let you listen to it because it's all copyrighted, and I really don't want to deal with potential copyright strikes on my channel. I would like to do a segment where I just shut up for a second and let you listen to it at full volume, but I can't safely do that. So instead I'll just have to describe it. It's electronic. It is a heavy, pulsing, thumping electronic soundtrack that matches the really vibrant visuals perfectly. It also causes this sort of screen-wide shaking thumping effect that goes along with the beat, which you can turn off if you don't like, but I think it adds to the effect, really. So the music is a definite standout for the game, and like I said, I'm sorry I can't actually let you listen to it, but take my word for it, it is really, really good. So how does the game actually work? Well, like I said, it is a very simple concept, but where all the complexity lies is in all the weapon and upgrade combinations and stuff that you can create to make a build for each run. And you will start with a turret. There are various different kinds of turrets. They can hold different amounts of weapons and upgrades for those weapons, and also have different starting statistics depending on the turret in question. But basically they are the platforms for your weapons. That is their main job. And you'll start with choosing a DNA letter to actually begin with, and each one has a specific role. So, for instance, A is a submachine gun, and this also means that if you add the letter A to any of your other weapons, then it will tend to add some sort of rapid-fire effect to it. Or G is a shotgun, so if you start adding Gs to other weapons, then it'll usually add some sort of spread fire to them. All said, the weapons can be up to 4 letters long, so that means there's a ton of weapons in this game because you have 1, 2, 3, and 4 letter weapons of all the different possible combinations between those 4 letters. As you use your weapons, you have this blue circle that fills up around your turret. This is your heat gauge, and of course you need to stop firing for a while to let it cool down, or indeed let it just max out and then it'll start to cool down on its own, but you won't be able to fire for a while this is happening. So you will start a wave, and during a wave, a whole bunch of enemies will spawn from the outside edges of the screen and start moving inwards, and you use the weapons that you have to try and defeat all of them before they reach you. Once a certain amount of time passes, the wave will be complete, and you'll go to a shop. And in this shop, you can spend biomass, which you get from defeating enemies, in order to buy various new weapons and upgrades and stuff. You can also choose to lock any of the items in a shop so that the next time the shop appears, that item will still be there. So if it's something that you can't quite afford yet, but you really want, you can save it for later. You can buy things like weapon letters in shops to add on to your own weapons that you have. Usually a turret will only have 1 letter space available at first, and you'll have to spend some biomass in the shop to unlock the ability to add on further letters, usually all the way up to 4. Although again, some turrets can only have, say, like 2 or 3 letters for each weapon, but they have a bunch of different weapons depending on which one you're using. So that's one of the main functions of the shop, is to actually build out your weapon, your arsenal for that particular run to create the combination of weapons that you actually want. But you can also get these square upgrades, and the upgrades are slotted to an individual weapon and upgraded in some way, usually some sort of positive and negative statistics. So it'll be like, size minus 10%, fire rate plus 30%. So that weapon that you attach it to will fire faster, but bullets will be smaller. Each weapon has a certain number of upgrade slots that is also determined by the turret that you're using, and just like with the weapon slots, these are usually locked except for 1 or 2, and you gotta spend some biomass to unlock further slots for more upgrade potential. Also, the upgrades themselves are one of the things that use this game's color scheme, and you have to have a weapon of that color in order to actually use them. So if you find a purple upgrade, then it'll only be attachable to weapons that have a purple letter A in them. So you need some sort of rapid fire weapon for them to be able to be upgraded by a purple upgrade. And there are also white upgrades that can be put on anything, which are really nice, but also a lot more rare than the colored upgrades. You can also find even rarer circular upgrades, and these slot into your turret itself rather than any of its weapons, and they tend to affect all of its weapons at once or some sort of statistic, like drastically increasing its maximum health or increasing its cooldown rate or something like that. Each turret often has about 3 of these big upgrade slots that you can purchase in order to sort of accentuate the rest of your build with, but those upgrades are much more rare than the others in the shop's inventory. You can also re-roll the shop, and different turrets will start with a different number of re-rolls. Once you purchase whatever you want and lock all the stuff that you want and everything from a shop, then you will press OK and you will go on to the next wave, where you will have 30 more seconds of defense to take care of, and then once that wave is over, you'll go back to a new shop, which will have refreshed stuff except for the things that you locked, and you will just continue going from there, trying to get bunches of biomass by killing lots of enemies to upgrade yourself and finish off your weapons in whatever form you want them to be for that specific run. Eventually you will go all the way to wave 30, at which point if you complete that one, then you will complete the run. Now, the run isn't technically over. There's an endless mode that happens after wave 30, but once you reach wave 30, you have completed that particular depth. So once you're done with endless mode, whenever you die, you will go back to the main menu and you can choose the next depth down, which will improve the enemies, make them stronger, make things more difficult for you, and you can do another 30 waves at that depth and then keep doing this until you go through all the depths and eventually reach the full-on endless mode and stuff like that. Enemies themselves also have the DNA letters system, so they all have different combinations of all the possible letters, and each different combination denotes a specific type of enemy with its own different types of behaviors. So there are lots of different enemy types, some that move really fast, some that move in a spiral, some that fire projectiles at you, some that explode into projectiles upon death, all sorts of stuff, so there's a lot of different behaviors for you to learn. Also, every 5 waves, you will have to choose a mutation, which is a negative effect that makes things harder for you. There will be a list of 3, and you can inoculate yourselves against 2 of them, but one of them you've got to choose to actually be active. So you choose the one that you think you can handle the best, and that's the one that'll happen. So from that point forward, things will get a bit more difficult based on whatever the mutation said will happen. Also, while progressing through the waves, you will unlock these purple upgrade points, and these are your meta currency. So once you're done with a run and you're back at the main menu, you can research stuff with these research points, and these unlock all sorts of new things. You can research new turrets to use, research new perks, because every turret has a list of perks that you can equip before a battle begins to make things a little bit easier for yourself. They're just extra benefits you can have. You can also upgrade all sorts of statistical elements to your turrets, like, increasing their cooldown rate or increasing their overall damage, or maybe you can make things a bit easier for yourself by researching lower enemy health so that you can kill enemies easier and things like that. Then eventually, once you research all of the possible intro research, 2 more tabs of research will open up that are a lot more expensive, that unlock all sorts of different cosmetics and stuff. So there's a tremendous number of cosmetics you can attach to your turrets and things, but they're not microtransactions. They're all available in-game from simply earning these research points. You'll also be unlocking things like other game modes, because this depth-based wave mode is only one of the game modes. There are multiple of them. Things like a classic mode, for instance, which acts completely different in terms of weapons and upgrades and stuff, and is actually a lot more difficult, but opens up some new builds and possibilities because of the way it works. This game has had a lot of love put into it. You can tell just by playing it. There's a tremendous amount of content here. There's stuff like 70 weapons and like 49 different turrets for you to choose from. There are almost 100 perks that you can equip your turret with different combinations of, and there are like 75 different upgrades to find during a run. There's just a massive amount of content in this game, and that's not counting all the other game modes and stuff too that you can play. But the variety isn't only in all the nucleotide stuff. There's also stuff like 75 different music tracks in the game. So yeah, there's just a huge amount of stuff to see. I also really appreciate the fact that every single weapon, all 70 of them, has a write-up that you can read about how it works. And there's also a bestiary, and I always appreciate a really good bestiary in a game, and this one has a text write-up for every single enemy type. So you can tell from the outset that this game was made with a lot of love, but it's also the fact that this game has been updated many times up until this point, and they've added lots of content to the game. The game already had a fair amount of content to begin with, but a lot of the new stuff, like the modes and some new turrets and other things like that, were added post-launch. So there has also been a very significant amount of post-launch content updating done here, and with the latest one happening on April 1st, adding the Jester turret, which is actually really fun to use because it just screws with everything and basically randomizes your entire run. So it's like a randomizer mode. I really like what's been done here with this game. It is a fantastic arcade experience. It also works extremely well on the Steam Deck, by the way. It's just the way that it works. It happens to be a really well-performing, really enjoyable game on the deck. It's just a really good sort of bite-sized experience that's perfect for that. So if you have one of those, this is a really good choice for something to play in the same vein as something like Vampire Survivors. Not to mention, this developer also has a new game on the way called Cell Command that looks really interesting. It's also using the same DNA and nucleotide system, but it's like a turn-based tactics meets Snake kind of thing. So it sounds really interesting. I'm definitely interested to see where it goes. So I will absolutely be covering that when it comes out later in the year. But as far as this game goes, it's easy to recommend. It's cheap and cheerful, and it's just a really good time. So I'll put the link in the description below this video to the Steam store page for Genome Guardian if you wish to check it out yourselves. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.